For more on this, I'm joined by Diane Francis, author of Merger of the Century, Why Canada and America Should Become One Country. Great to see you there, live for us in Toronto. Some might joke they're already one country, but one thing they share is this trouble of getting big projects approved. I won't go on the long list of projects that have been stopped in the U.S. or delayed, but this one in particular in British Columbia, the Northern Gateway, is it going to get done, you think?
Well, the Northern Gateway pipeline through BC is going to be tied up in courts, I think, for a decade or more. It's not only the native groups, but it's the provincial government, it's the opposition parties, it's the environmentalists. I mean, even Hollywood is against it. So that's very tricky. And we do know that probably one of the most environmentally sensitive ways to move oil is by boat, especially through those beautiful Channel Islands and so on, from British Columbia to Asian markets. The other pipeline, of course, we're having trouble with is the Keystone XL, which takes the oil sands down to the United States. That has been held up for 5 years because of a number of reasons, mostly environmental and a lot of politics. And so really what Canada is now faced with having to do, and this doesn't help Asia on the oil side, although LNG is a very real possibility, but it's oil by rail. And the amount of oil now being moved in train cars in the United States and Canada is more than the oil that would go in the XL pipeline. And shortly, in a year, it'll be more oil that would go through both pipelines. Well, so I think Diane, you're going to find
that is a great
the oil
point
going to the U.S.
There is more rail cars. There are going to be these new rail cars that are more environmentally friendly, by the tens of thousands. They're building them. But it puts Canada in a very odd situation, right? You can't export to the west. You can't export to the south because Keystone, the Northern Gateway, is not working. You only have this rail, and there's a finite amount of throughput that you can go through with rail, and ultimately rail has to go to a port that has to be unloaded and onto a ship. Is this a realistic long-term option for Canada?
Well, the rail just connects up across the border, and you don't need a permit to send a train full of grain or gasoline or oil or bitumen across the border into the United States. That's why it's happening. So that's where it's going to go. And it can go any point in the United States. It can go 50 miles inside the border and then hook up with a pipeline that has capacity so that most of the journey will be by pipeline, but it'll just be railed to a certain point. Sometimes it'll go all the way down to a refinery, but it doesn't have to. So that's really how the market has corrected for this blockage of pipeline production. And it's not just the pipeline from Canada to the U.S. or Canada to the West Coast in Asia. It's just pipelines internally in both countries. We just have a real problem with this. Nobody wants them. Everybody wants to drive a car, but nobody wants the pipeline.
Well, here's the other problem. I'm originally from Seattle, and I know there are a lot of new oil trains going through Vancouver, BC, coming down to Seattle and vice versa. Yes. Nobody wants them there. They don't want the oil trains there because they're worried that there could be a disaster or catastrophe. Even though the risk is small, they're worried that that could happen. This is a public viewpoint. There's really no way of changing that, is there?
Well, yes, there is. Washington and various states are now moving on rail safety laws, and that's long overdue. Also in Canada, they're making sure that the rail beds are safer, that the trains go slower if they're carrying oil, that the train cars are properly marked so everybody knows what's going on and that they don't go through the middle of a downtown area. There's all kinds of precautions that are being imposed now on rail travel for oil. And, so that is kind of helping the market, I think, make it a little safer. But it's a huge problem. Now, the other issue is LNG, and that's going to happen very rapidly. The United States and Canada have something like 38 projects that they're asking approval of, and I think about 5 have happened. You've got them on the West Coast for Asia. You've got them on the East Coast for Europe, Gulf Coast for anywhere. And that's going to happen, I think, in the next 5 to 7 years, so that China, particularly Japan, which is getting off nuclear, is dying for more LNG, and so is Korea. Korea right now is pretty much 100% dependent on Russia for LNG. They don't want to be, and I think China is well advised also, and I think they're very smart about it when you see what goes on in Ukraine, they're taking a lot of gas from Russia, but not to take all of it.
The insatiable appetite of the fast-growing Asian countries. Diane Francis, author of Merger of the Century, Why Canada and America Should Just Be One.